Now let's look at the steps after Homo erectus evolves, essentially modern man, from about 100,000 years ago or so. We have essentially modern humans, and Neanderthal died off sometime around 30,000 years ago, and Homo sapien comes in around 35,000 years ago or so. So now let's draw a new line for that. Homo sapien, 35,000 years ago, right there. Now there were glaciers. Glaciers were covering all of Europe until about 10,000 years ago. Or a lot of Europe, pardon me. Clear down into all across Canada, into the northern part of the United States, and mountain ranges all over the world were covered in thick layers of glacier until about 10,000 years ago. You could put 10,000 BC and you're only 2,000 years off. It's fine. Some people have said 16,000 years ago with the retreat. Now after this, after the glacial retreat, agriculture becomes possible. So here's a huge area of 25,000 years in which, what kind of technology does man have? Well, going back, here's Australopithecine 1 million years ago. Remember, this whole 35,000 timeline fits in the last inch of this other timeline over here. So the glacial retreat is a blip at the very, very last bit. Glacial retreat was caused, of course, by cavemen driving SUVs. They warmed up the atmosphere, caused global warming. We've been screwed ever since. Now, what kind of tools was Australopithecine making? What kind of tools were the Australopithecines making? And what sort of, this is called the Stone Age, of course. What sort of tools were they making? Stone axes. The Swiss Army knife of the Stone Age. Now here is a interesting specimen from France, from a cave in France, and this is only 30 or 40,000 years ago. It's 11 inches long, but only 4/10 of an inch thick, less than half an inch thick. It's incredibly delicate and couldn't really be practically used for anything. So they say it was probably an emblem of a good master tool maker, or ceremonial point or something like that. But that shows how fine they can make these. And I've seen arrowheads that are just about as small as the size of the bottom of this marker right here. Little teeny tiny stone arrowheads, finely chipped. I mean, think of people who are genetically just like us, but all they know how to do is work stone. Wow, they're gonna, I mean, we make computers and stuff, you know, so genetically they have the capacity to think quite efficiently, and they spend all their time and efforts on stonework. Okay. Now we're going to put stone tools at 750,000 years ago, even though I've read estimates as high as 1.2 million years ago that there was stone being worked. And draw the line where you will. The Stone Age is hundreds of thousands of years long. It goes back to here, and they were making stone tools all this time, or if it starts here and they were making stone tools. That's amazing for stone tools to go back that far. Now, glacial retreat right here, discovery of metalworking. And another important situation, agriculture begins around 6,000 BC. Okay? 6,000 BC agriculture begins. We have to now mention something that was going on for a long time before this. A predecessor to agriculture. Men did not just have a sudden revelation and realize that they could plant seeds in the ground and grow them and have food. They didn't just realize that suddenly. For tens of thousands of years there was something called horticulture. Horticulture, and that, of course, is to take care of wild plants, to prune them or whatever, protect them from predator species around. Do what you can for them. Not necessarily planting your own, or maybe planting them and then just sort of leaving them be and coming back and hoping that they do well. That was probably part of an early stage of horticulture as well. So they got planted purposefully by humans, but not necessarily tended all the time, and humans didn't necessarily stay there. They might have to follow some herds or something. So horticulture and animal husbandry comes into play around the time of the glacial retreat as well. Now we get to the rise of civilization. Let's talk about agriculture and all this business. Okay, here is our new timeline, which will be serving us 8,000 BC to today, and the year 0, of course, is Christ's birth. Skip in filming, so different outfit. Now, as we say, we get 10,000 BC, 0 there. Quoting now from, just a bit from Early Man by Chester G. Starr. Chester G. Starr, Early Man. We're on page 38. He says, however little we may really know about man's intellectual and spiritual capabilities, by 10,000 BC he certainly had become a very skillful hunter, dangerous to every other type of animal, and already had begun to exterminate some species. There's an excellent Burton Braley poem. Talks about man, helpless he, with tooth or nail, in a world where fang and claw and power make the law. It rhymes though, I just slaughtered it, but that's a very good poem. It's got a good point that we are scrawny little things compared to a lot of the beasts of prey that were around for hundreds of thousands of years while we were evolving, and a lot of beasts of prey that still are around, and we were dangerous to them. By this date, 10,000 BC, mankind had developed a social and physical culture which enabled it to live in any area of the globe, from the edge of the northern ice masses to the fringes of the complete deserts, and I might add, on the extremely isolated Australia. Right? Australia's been cut off from the rest of land for a long time. That's why they have all these weird things that aren't related to the rest of the stuff on Earth. Right? We've got bears everywhere on Earth but Australia and Antarctica. Right? We have all kinds of stuff on Australia only, and all kinds of stuff that's all over the world but not in Australia because it's so isolated. Humans are there. Now, skipping forward a bit. Now, the people in North Central Europe around 10,000 BC had developed fishing from canoes with nets and hooks. Right? They had hooks, they had nets to catch large numbers of fish in. They gathered nuts and fruits and hunted with bows and arrows as well as the spear. The bow is the first true machine that we know to have been made by man. That is interesting, that a machine of war or of violence, right? Which I don't have anything against, but that might get a lot of people's panties in a bunch. Now, around 10,000 BC, we also see a bit of a change in that humans are living past the age of 20 more and more often. If you were alive when you were 21 years old, you're almost certain you're about half of the people alive at 21 died by the time they were 30. So most people were dying before the age of 20. Now we have quite a few making it to the age of 20 and past. Now this is when people begin to become sedentary. They begin to stay in the same place more often. At least it's not true in the Americas. It's only true in the old world.